Banana, banana. We are back. It's Cig and the Big. We're talking the Sunday and Monday NFL slate here, giving you our quick take predictions, talking about the games a little bit. We're going to run through, talk about the odds, talk about what everybody's facing against here, and then, I don't know, give a little final score predictions, and then maybe a little teaser for some, fantasy slash line fans out there. And we're not talking the Colombian ones. Siglin, how you feeling today, buddy?
I'm feeling great. I'm always ready to talk sports. Nothing better. And there's literally nothing better than talking football with one of my best friends.
Yep. You got to love it. Camaraderie, brothership, football. It's what we're all about here. But we're going to break it down with Cig and the Big, and we're going to start right away here, right after we have a word from our direct sponsors. Oh, wait, never mind. We don't have those. We are going, yet. We are open for business. We will pretty much sell everything that isn't political or illegally tied to things. Inbox us. But let's make some money. Let's make some picks. Let's talk something here. Let's talk the first game of the Sunday. We're going to go regional here, and we're going to stick with the Broncos, going to Tampa Bay against the Buccaneers. And this is a game of different fortunes. To give you a quick breakdown, Tampa Bay is a 6.5-point favorite over the Broncos. 39.5 is the over-under. And Denver's plus 250 on the money line as he is cupping me and going to swing. Siglin, what's your thoughts?
That Tampa Bay is going to come in and absolutely slaughter Denver after what happened to them last week. They are not going to let that happen again. I almost say Tampa Bay by 14, maybe even 21 here. Mike Evans might get undershadowed a little bit because they have they have PS2 and he's doing his thing out there. But you still have a rookie quarterback against one of the best front fours in the NFL. They have solid young pieces who are stepping up and showing that they can make moves. I mean, they held Amon-Ra Brown to under 70 yards last week still. We are taking the Bucks. We're taking the spread. You're taking Baker's over pass yards.
But, the Bucks are here. They're winning. That is all that there is to be said. I agree with everything you said, except for you making me look like a little bitch. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Moving on to Houston in Minnesota. This one, Minnesota is coming in 2-0, and I mean riding high, but they're still going to give Houston the points here. 2.5 points, road favorites, 46.5 over under. I'm going to break down this game to start here, and at what point do we actually respect the Vikings? I do favor the Texans here, but I think even given your customary, the ghost 3 you kind of give to the home team, the ghosty 3 points, I only favor the Texans by that neutrally, so I think this is an even spread game. It's going to be tough. I think Minnesota's defense is looking, rejuiced, but also outside of a handicapped Niners team and a horrendous Giants team.
That line was handicapped.
No. But I do think Minnesota puts up a fight here, and honestly, I like them against the points there. I think this is a very close game because I think by Sunday this changes to 3 even. So give me that.
I'm going to be heavy on the train on Sam Darnold until week 4. So yep. I actually do think that the Vikings hold their own here. I mean, we've seen the Texans. They are playing a little sloppily. They should have beat the dog shit out of the Bears on Sunday. But if you have a defense that can hold them over, I mean, all you really have to worry about is Nico Collins at this moment. Joe Mixon looked back to the reason why the Bengals got rid of him. He wasn't week 1 Joe Mixon. And with that being said, I think the hungry dogs stay hungry, and underdog mentality, I'm actually going to be taking the Vikings straight up here.
Straight up, I'll join you on that one. Not that I don't like the Texans. I think they are actually a team to contend with. I think this is going to be a dogfight. I just have, great respect for both teams. You have kind of the funny switching of Danielle Hunter going down to Houston, but then Jonathan Grenard switching up to and signing with Minnesota. So you have that LOL aspect, a couple of reunions here for some players. But yeah, I like Minnesota. Maybe that's just regionally biased here. Maybe C.J. Stroud comes out and dominates them because I still do have some concern over the past game. But the front seven of the Vikings is what's been winning them games on the defensive side. And then you still have KOC, Sam Darnold. It's not October yet. The ghosts aren't out. So, and plus you're giving him Justin Jefferson. So if they continue to suffer injuries, though, watch out because Minnesota is the most cruxin team in the NFL as far as just bad luck goes. So Watch it over the season, but early in the season, I'm liking where the Vikings are looking. I like them this game here. Chargers versus Steelers here. We got the Steelers at 1-point favorites, 35.5 over under. Cig, talk to me about the Steelers, how they have been one of the most complex teams yet again in the NFL.
That defense is shown to do what they do. They hold teams to low points. They don't let them get in the end zone. TJ Watt is a force, going for Defensive Player of the Year after being snubbed yet again last year. And it's just really tough. But the issue is we have a young left tackle named Joe Alt who is probably going to be shadowing TJ like he did with Clowney and a little bit of Crosby on the plays that he was in on him. And this could be one of TJ Watt's toughest challenges so far this season. He hasn't really faced anyone worth a shit.
I think you're now. Here's a battle. Now here's a couple of guys who are well-coached teams. They're well-coached teams. I think Harbaugh, it's been obvious so far. I hate to say it, week 1 against us, and then week 2 against Carolina. They're more fundamentally sound. It was never really a question about that, and they turned pretty much their greatest weaknesses into their greatest strength, and that's the discipline of their head coach. The Chargers, I'm still not all sold in on. I think this is going to be a very grueling game. You're going to have the battle is in the trenches. You highlighted that. That's where the fight's going to be. Where it comes down to, though, is I actually do favor the Chargers slightly here because of the quarterback play. It's not against Justin Fields 100%. It's for Justin Herbert. Herbert just is that good of a quarterback, and I think when tit comes to tat, you can line up the positions and notice like young, great talent at the wide receiver positions on both sides that's still unproven. QJ's coming out of his shell last week. Pickens is obviously a young, uncrowned player, but a dog. But you're looking at two teams who almost line up identically, both sides for, Highsmith and Watt. You have Bosa and Mack. Where the one outlier is where this game is going to be won, and that's the quarterback play.
I don't disagree with you. I think this will actually be the hardest defense that Fields is going to have to play so far, like the most complete. They have a solid edge. They have good safeties and corners. They have solid linebackers, and your boy Denzel Perryman back in blue.
Mm-hmm. I hate to see it.
It is what it is. They're a better team. I'm not going to say they have a better coach because Mike Tomlin never had a losing season as a head coach. Very impressive.
Sure.
And does what he needs to do. Even with some of the shittiest of backups. Like, hell, he had a winning season with Mason Rudolph, but no one talks about that. With that being said, I do also agree with you. I think the Chargers continue to stay on the roll. They're playing nice, hard-nosed football. I think J.K. Dobbins continues to get after it. The biggest thing is going to be is how healthy can Herbert stay in that pocket and do what he needs to do.
100%. Final score predictions for me. They got the game at 35.5. Actually, this is going to be something I think that's a sneaky over, not because I dislike the defenses, just because it's a professional football game and 35.5 sometimes can just be low. My 35.5, though, was a 21-17. It is not by much, but I just looked up the weather's sunny. I still think you have offenses that are competent enough and defenses that are aggressive, but also new enough in their schemes and everything that you can have some break plays. Now, I think, once again, you're talking Herbert versus the Steelers defense and Fields versus a rather new, untested Chargers defense. Let's talk about the offenses they've played, though. They look great, but it was our anemic offense in week 1 and then the Panthers pre-Bryce Young benching. So, once again, I do think that there's a little give in that because it's professional football. Because, yeah, this game very well could end up 10-3 and I look like a jackass, but I'm calling 21-17 on the over.
My sneaky over was to actually be 13-27. I think this is a game where you see the Chargers offense come alive because they're going to have to a little bit more. They're going to be tested a little bit more. It's not going to be as easy as last week where they were just coasting. And that first week, it was a little rough for them. They had to battle it out. If you take away the J.K. Dobbins 80-yard touchdown, that game's a lot closer, and we're talking a different ball game.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I could go on for days where the splinters cracked into eventually us just losing momentum and the Chargers getting away from us where we could have won that game. But I agree. This is going to be a hard test for them again. This time, though, I think the Chargers, they still make that play or two. That's going to be crucial to pulling away from the Steelers.
Eagles-Saints, We have a huge over here with the best offense in the league versus kind of a lackluster Eagles team compared to what we're used to seeing. I have an over-under of 49.5 with a spread going to the Saints, -2.5.
Yeah, at home here, they're going to finally give some love to Derek Carr and the Saints, and God, it makes me a little tearful, but also happy to see my boy DC thriving there. I think this is plain and simple because the Eagles have looked dynamic on offense, but their defense has looked absolutely horrible. C.J. Gardner-Johnson is not the man who was in Philadelphia 2 years ago. They are very young. They're very inexperienced, and right now, I think a Saints team that is showing that their continuity in a league that is full of change, and we are seeing so many teams right now play a little rough because of, new players, new schemes, everything. In an offense that is really turning over the same people as last year, they're proving that that's been the formula to being like the best team. Like they have the highest scoring gap of the first 2 weeks of the season. They've dominated the Cowboys. They dominated the Panthers. The question is, are the Eagles next on that list when they have not looked like the Eagles?
Dare I say they almost remind me of the '09 Saints? Like a team that no one thought had a chance, a nice aging veteran quarterback, and he just kind of figures out how to play the game how he's supposed to, takes over, throws for 5,000 yards, comes in, beats my Colts in a Super Bowl. Like they just kind of seem like the team of destiny. Very underrated defense, but they're playing well above their level. Like they held their own against the boys last week, who a lot of people, that's NFC championship favorites. Yeah, not Super Bowl favorites, but NFC championship favorites. But with that being said, my play of the day is Rashid Shaheed over longest reception at 22.5 yards.
It's been money so far. Derek Carr obviously loves himself a good speedster that can, break the slot down, have a nice play action, and then he can just gun it out too. But obviously, the Saints have become my NFC team because of Derek Carr. We never should have got rid of him, and he's proven that now. Not only is he in the second year of an offense, but guess what? It's also election year Derek Carr. So election year Derek Carr, if you don't know 2016, 2020, well, now it's 2024. The boy balls. Like plain and simply, he has the least amount of interceptions in his career in those 2 seasons. There's only 2 seasons, I believe, that are under 10, with 7 and 6. Highest touchdown totals, highest passing yards, highest passer rating as well. And 2024 could be even better than that because the weapons we're seeing now, I mean, we got Chris Olave there. We got Alvin Kamara there. I mean, we got some dogs. And Foster Moreau, fresh back from beating cancer, is now beating defenses.
Scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's my boy right there. I love me some Foster for the people. But, I mean, Alvin Kamara, I think, having the juice still is going to be what keeps this offense together. We're going to spotlight Derek Carr, but it's really Alvin Kamara, who I believe you have a little fantasy anecdote to tell us about.
He is now the all-time leading running back with 15 weeks of leading all other running backs in the league of fantasy, passing LaDainian Tomlinson. If that doesn't tell you what kind of accomplishment that is, I don't know what does, because LT, in my opinion, is one of the greatest running backs I've ever seen in person.
Well, and since we're talking fantasy trackers here, I mean, yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable to think that. And especially it's because Kamara, I don't think, gets the respect of, like, being one of those guys. Like, no one's ever kind of thought, I think, at one point, this is the best guy in the game. He's been in the conversation a couple of times, but when you're talking longevity, performance, and then also these boom games that he seems to have, harken back to last year's 6-touchdown performance, sealing fantasy fates. I mean, winning games. You got to put him up there. You at the end of the day, you might want to talk top 10 about him. You might want to talk top 10.
In the fryer. When you put 5 taters in the fryer on a Sunday, it's a good day.
Yeah. Sounds like lunch and dinner served with that. Final predictions for this game, though. I mean, if we're rocking on the 50-point line, I do like it. I do like it unless, weather pending, they're in a dome. I don't think this game stays under 50. Once again, you're talking about the only way it stays under 50 is if the Eagles are absolutely dead on offense, and you still have Saquon Barkley. Hopefully A.J. Brown's back from injury. Nope. Not back. They're calling him out again.
I'm a manager of his. I do not have him.
Okay. All right. So, but at least Saquon, you're going to be a little bit worse off in the passing game, but they get their shots through. Still like the Saints, though, especially now knowing that A.J. Brown is out.
Moving on to our next game, we got the Revenge of the Willis. It is a 36.5 over, Titans -3. My big thing about this one is, and I don't know how Cole's going to love this, Josh Jacobs under this week. That Titans front four is nothing to fuck with. And if you can't break through the front four, you're not getting yards.
You're talking Emmanuel Wilson's going to be somebody who is going to fit behind Josh Jacobs. And while Josh Jacobs loves being the bell cow, he can be the bell cow. I just don't think long-term you want to ride him too hard. However, I don't know if I'm going to be so boisterous to take the under. I do think Jacobs is still hefty for 25-plus carries because you're talking it's early in the season and they're just trying to get through a rough patch right now instead of, deal with the whole season without Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love's back in a couple of weeks. In this game, though, you have the interesting dynamic of they beat you guys last week, but that's because of the run defense. And I said that exact thing. I was like, if Josh Jacobs has a day, that's going to be the crux. They don't really have the crux here, so if you have to rely on Malik Willis airing it out, I'm going to take his under on pass yards, and I'm going to take the Titans for their first win of the season.
Dobbs targets. That was the only person he was fucking throwing to.
Moving on to the next game here, we got the Giants and the Browns. The Giants going to be traveling to Cleveland, where Cleveland is a 6-point favorite. You got an over-under of 38.5. Starting off here, the Browns haven't looked good, but one thing that reigns true is that defense. It's going to be a rough day if you're like myself and you're a Malik Neighbors owner who needs to start him this week. It's going to be hard against Denzel Ward in that defense because nothing else has really proven to work for the Giants.
I think Malik will still get his. They've actually been lining him up in the slot, and I think that he will absolutely dominate the younger cat that they drafted 2 years ago. But with that being said, moving on to this game, Myles Garrett is going to have a fucking day.
Oh, yeah. If you're talking about a sack lunch, you're talking about what Myles Garrett's looking at and Daniel Jones behind that paper-thin offensive line. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this one. I guess under because of the defense. I do think the Giants have a respectable enough front line to make it interesting enough to where they hold the Browns, but still Deshaun gets a couple through. I think you're talking like something ugly like 20-7. Just not a real attractive game.
I actually think under as well. I was thinking like 27-10.
Yeah. Well, that would be just under. So, moving on though, we're going to talk about your boys here. I'll break it down and then I will swing it right to you. We got the Bears and the Colts, where they are only giving you guys 1 point in the Matty Eberflus revenge game. But that's because you guys are 0-2 going against the 1-1 Bears. Over under a 43.5. This one is going to be fun, I think, and I'll let you talk about the Colts first.
No DeForest Buckner, coach. That's a big loss. With that being said, I do think we're going to see a little bit more of what Anthony can actually do this week. Shane Steichen said it himself. He's like, I just need to let him play. I need to quit trying to play the safe ball. And that's on me as a coach. I do love that accountability from him. So from there, I do think that we will actually, like I said, I was actually texting our friend Austin, friend of the program. He was messaging me and he goes, so we have the worst rush defense versus the worst rush offense in the NFL. Should be like fighting out of a wet paper sack. And I said, honestly, I feel like both quarterbacks are going to throw 2 touchdowns. Whoever ends up winning the game is what defense takes one of those interceptions to the house.
See, I like you guys here. I do think the defense obviously is a lot better on the Bears side. However, the explosive plays is what's going to get me. I think the Bears defense, eventually you can wear them down because the offense just hasn't really moved that well. Maybe this is the week we see Caleb, finally get some control because the rush defense is so bad for you guys. DeAndre starts moving it on, against him, but it's going to be which strength proves through and allows the rest of their game plan to open up. Like you're going to have to find a nail, kind of drill it in, and then hope to God it opens up to an oil basin, So final on this one though, if we can talk over under 43.5, I guess, what do you got?
I would probably take the under on that one.
Inside of a dome, under. It's still September, though. Every game's going to hopefully have good weather. But that's it for the morning slate of the games. We're going to move on to the afternoon slate, and so I don't forget it this time, we're going to start with my boys. We're going to talk about the Raiders. In our home opener against the Carolina Panthers, we're a 5.5-point favorite. 40.5 is going to be your over-under score. Man, I guess what were you? I'll kick it to you because I want to talk obviously a little bit on this one, and I'll let you have the opening point. But what did you think about last week versus the Ravens?
Brock Bowers is that dude. Gardner Minshew loves playing down in the fourth quarter. I know that as a previous fan of his. But with that being said, I think last week was kind of Gardner Minshew's coming out game. He's remembered like, hey, I am a quarterback here. I'm got to do my part as well. And I think you're going to see more of that this week. You're playing against a lackluster defense. I think you finally see that him and Devontae Adams connection like really come alive. And Devontae goes for like five to eight catches, 117 yards. Probably catches his first TD.
He had a touchdown last week.
Catches his second. But with that being said, I also think Brock Bowers continues to just be worked into that offense. And the thing that I feel the most sorry for is Mike Myers, because I thought that guy was going to be a stud. He still could, but you got a Ferrari and a Corvette, you're going to run the Ferrari.
That's a great analogy, actually. That really is, because I loved the Michael Mayer pick. I was like, hey, second round, great value. I thought, for him to be a complete tight end, that was probably more important to like a game plan rather than like a fantasy aspect. I didn't think he was someone who's going to tip the scales, Travis Kelce wise, George Kittle wise is like a fantasy prospect. But, I was like, yeah, like I love this pick for like a game plan. He's an all around guy. Like he works awesome as a tight end one, but man, the concept of putting him with like someone like Bowers, who's a good blocker, but you've seen so far, most receptions by a rookie tight end in the first two games. He's out there. He's creating space for himself. He's creating targets. We're seeing that Luke Getsy can actually have some sort of concept of the passing game. He's just apparently a giant pussy that needs Antonio Pierce in his face to be like, pass the ball downfield, or I swear to God, you'll be the quickest Raiders coach to get fired since John Gruden. Like, I will fire a man 2 games in. Don't tempt me right now. Like, there was just that look in his eyes, and what happened? Came out in the second half. We started firing the ball downfield. We had a mixture of everything. The biggest fucking problem is we're going to have to create something in the run game, and we're going to have to start this week because no Derek Brown out for the season for the Panthers. This is the best time for us to try something. We are literally the worst rush offense in the NFL, and that's not a way to win, because you want a great defense to be paired with a run game. You don't want to have to rely on a great defense and a pass game, because then late we're going to have an exhausted defense trying to keep up when our offense is either going to be pulling away, hopefully, or in a more likely scenario, fourth and out, and not taking much time off the clock.
I also think Andy Dalton comes in and makes this game a little more competitive. I do always love the Red Rocket. He's a great game manager. How do you not like Andy Dalton at TCU, man?
I love Andy Dalton. I was more joking about the Red Rocket.
Red Rifle, whatever you want to call him. But with that being said, I think the Raiders are going to be too much to handle. I think Max Crosby gets maybe 2 or 3 sacks this game because he's going to be facing the worst guard in the league. It's not going to be a fun day for the quarterback back there.
Well, and I think you've now seen in the first 3 games having one other force on that defensive line. Like last year towards the end, Max was kind of the staple that allowed Malcolm Koonce to open up. But right now you're seeing Christian Wilkins is as respected, amongst that defensive line. And when you don't focus on one of them, the other, or you focus on one of them, the other one makes a play. And I saw that last week, especially in the second half with Lamar. Like you saw, okay, we're going to take the center guard and we're going to put it on Wilkins. All right, you leave a tackle one-on-one with Max, you're fucked. Even a tight end chip, like you're only delaying the inevitable. I think you put Andy Dalton in this week, and I'm going to talk about that because I don't think it's because Bryce Young is bad. I think you're saving him. I think as a franchise, you realize that your talent isn't up to par right now, nor is Bryce Young. So this move, gives you a veteran who does make Dave Cannell's not a liar. It is a better chance to win right now. Now, everybody's like, well, they're terrible. Why are they trying to play for the playoffs? Because they're professionals. They're always playing for their job, and I'm sorry, no one ever fucking loses on purpose. No one does in the NFL. I'm sorry. Like, no matter how rigged you think the game is, no one is tanking. Second off, though, Bryce Young needs to add muscle. He needs to mature as a quarterback, and he needs to not be scared. Now, you might have already shell-shocked him in 18 games. You're hoping you didn't. What you're hoping with is I think this is actually Dave Canellis being smart, and he's saying, hey, we need to take a step back. We need to have the veteran start and maybe have Bryce sit on the sideline and see what it looks like to make a veteran play. He was only barely 22 when he was drafted. We're not talking Bo Nix carrying an offense for 65 games here and still looking rough. And we bench him in the second year. Like, if Sean Payton doesn't have any sort of success with him next year, you're talking a guy who had a lot of talent around him in college and almost plays on a worse team in the pros. We have to give him time. And I think that's what you're doing with this is you're trying to reset the clock. You're realizing, hey, it's too early. He should have sat last year, even as the number 1 pick. We're going to do that right now before we have to move on.
I don't disagree with you. Like RG3 tweeted, he said, remember, both of these guys are thriving now. And there's a photo of when Sam Darnold and Baker were both in Carolina together. And it just shows something. It's the organization. Yeah. They haven't been the same since Cam left.
I agree. And before we move on, all I'm going to say is this. If the GMs want to get in a room this weekend and Tom Telesco wants to offer a 5th or a 6th for Bryce, all these other quarterbacks got traded for this offseason, I would not hate having him in that quarterback room, even if he had to sit behind Gardner all year. Next game, though, we're talking Dolphins-Seahawks. Seahawks, 4-point favorite, 2-0, 41.5 over-under, and they're at home against a injured Dolphins team.
What you would consider a rookie quarterback going up into Seattle. Now, don't get me wrong, Skylar Thompson has looked great. He looked phenomenal in the preseason. He looked good last year when he had to come in after they decided Mike White wasn't the answer. But it's still Seattle, and it's in Seattle. With that being said, I'm taking Seattle. I don't know if I would quite take the spread because it's Miami, and they still have Tyreek Hill. They have Jalen Waddle. Is A-Chain 100? Should be 100% because he played last game, never came out. So Miami still has their weapons, and with that being said, I'd say they're going to favor A-Chain a lot because you don't know what you're going to get out of Skyler necessarily in the throwing game completely. And from there, you have Geno. The Seattle's offense has only gotten better. Miami could barely contain Buffalo's nobody wide receivers. What are they going to do when they're facing a DK Metcalf, a JSN, and a Tyler Lockett, Mm-hmm. With that being said, I would take Seattle, and what's the over-under at?
41.5.
I'd probably take the under. Seattle's really not scoring that much.
Not scoring that much. This is one of those even games where the only thing I like is Seattle -4. You have a lot on that offense, but you still had a lot last week, and the offense just didn't look good. After Tua left, it didn't look good originally. The Seahawks, I think, are quietly very good on defense. You have great cornerbacks in Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen, solid safeties. I think they have enough to contain Miami, enough to beat the 4-point spread. I don't think this is a blowout by any means, but you're missing your starting quarterback. This would have been a competition regardless if you had Tua. Seattle's kind of slept on, I think, especially getting a defense coach, out of Baltimore there. I think Mike McDonald is playing to the favor of this offense. Maybe Kay Walker's back. If not, Charbonnet looks good. I like Seattle here. The over-under is a crux to me because I feel like 24-20 is my gut feeling on this for Seattle to push, or 24-17. In that situation, a field goal literally makes or breaks the spread. So because 41 is under and 44 is over. So that's where I'm not going to guess the over-under. That's just kind of where I'm at, 24-20, 24-17. But yeah, players I do like in this one. If K-Walk doesn't start, grab Charbonnet. He's looked good, and like you said, the Dolphins' defense, coverage-wise, has looked all right, but their front seven is missing some interior presence, and that's obvious. They lost Christian Wilkins. We have the Ravens and the Cowboys. Baltimore heads into Dallas, 1.5-point favorite, over-under 48.5. Do the Ravens get their first win on Sunday?
This is my thing about Lamar. Lamar has always played his best when he plays his strongest competitors. I think last week it kind of got away from him from the Ravens because they all just walked into that game thinking they were going to win it. They come into this game, they're preparing for a battle. And when you prepare for a battle against Lamar Jackson, I think your one breaking factor is going to be Micah Parsons. But we also really haven't heard much about Micah Parsons this year. Since the podcast has been going, you just really not hearing much about the kid, not hearing him make the game-breaking plays he was making last year. And if Lamar can get outside of him, I think this is their game to lose. They have to come and win this one.
You're talking two games now that are mental mistakes away, and then literally an inch away from being 2-0 against the defending world champions in a very tough, it appears, Raiders team. I don't say that biasedly because a week ago I was like, hey, we're all defense and no offense. So, but the defense is missing Patrick Queen. The defense is not all the way together after Mike McDonald left for Seattle. We just talked about him in Seattle as a positive. Let's talk about him not being here as a negative. Dallas is going to be fun this year. I think their defense is not as good. They're not as dominant, but man, Dak and CD are slinging it. Dak is going to be Dak. We joke about him being the black Derek Carr, but he is, and that's showing up this year too for both of them. Like they can be great, but they can also give you games where they're kind of the reason the team loses. You know, when you need your quarterback to win. However, I do like Baltimore to get their first win. I don't think it happens 3 times. If it happens 3 times, you're starting to look internally and you're like, okay. But let's remember the last 2 years, Baltimore started 0-2, and then they get their shit together. Justin Tucker learns how to kick. You know, if he makes a 50 last week, they win that game. If the pass interference in the end zone doesn't get called, they win that game. If a lot of things don't happen, they win that game. So, like, let's not act like this is a very bad 0-2. This is shit just didn't fall your way. You got to finish better. 0-2.
I don't disagree with that. Moving on, we have the 49ers and the Rams. 49ers -7 because the Rams are really banged up. Demarcus Robinson is your number 1 wide receiver this week. And we have a over-under of 44.5, which I am actually going to take the under. You saw them be almost abysmal last week against the Cardinals, who are supposed to have one of the worst defenses in the league, but I think Jonathan Gannon has kind of really turned that around, really set the tone there. And the 49ers are a better team. They're also banged up. You're not going to have Debo. You're not going to have Christian McCaffrey. So it's going to be a little bit battle of who has the better backups and who's the better coach. And the issue is both of these guys are great at that fucking thing.
Yeah, I think I work with a Rams fan, John, and we were just kind of joking that this is not Niners-Rams like you want to see. It's just kind of the Niners-Rams we have. No Christian McCaffrey.
We used to get used to.
Yep. Niners-Rams with no Debo, no Christian McCaffrey. You're talking Jordan Mason and Brandon Ayuk. It's still enough, though, for the Niners. I don't want to spend a lot of time here. Yeah, Juwan Jennings, I like the Niners with the 7 here. Matt Stafford is enough to make the game closer than 14, but 10 points would probably be my spread on this. Stafford could make it interesting. I don't know. The Niners defense really hasn't come alive yet. They looked good, but not great on Monday night. They looked not great last week against the Vikings. Matt Stafford could be enough to make some things happen, but I don't think the Rams are scoring 30. I mean, it could be fun because of the coaches and because of the situations. However, yeah, lacking the star power, I just think the Niners take this one.
I was going to say the only thing I feel confident on is the under.
Yeah, fair. Final afternoon game, I believe we have the Lions-Cardinals. Very, very fun matchup here. Going into Arizona, Detroit is still a 3-point favorite. 52.5 for two teams that have been bopping on offense, but whose defenses kind of are vice versa. I think Detroit has played a little bit lower defensively, especially last week, than what everybody expected from a improved. Well, Aiden is Aiden. But then the Cardinals are playing better than everybody kind of thought. Almost pulled off the upset week 1 in Buffalo.
Definitely pulled off the upset in week 2.
Yeah, so this is going to be a fun one at home for Arizona. I mean, who's your team? Do you still ride with the Lions here?
I think the only thing I'm confident on this game is the over. I mean, dude, you don't know what's going to happen. You have Kyler Murray, who is one of the most interesting players in the NFL because he could either get absolutely blown out or absolutely blow you out or make it to the closest game of all time to where he has to go, oh shit, Marvin's down there somewhere. But with that being said, we also saw the coming of Marvin Harrison. He kind of forced him the ball last week. And like Marvin said, I went and looked at the completions, and I saw his only 4 incompletions on this stat line were to me, and I need to do better. So he could have had 4 more balls last week. So he's trying to feed him the ball. He knows he has a star receiver. And to be honest, you're not going to put Brian Branch on him. I just don't think that they have a corner that could cover Marvin Harrison one-on-one if it gets down to it.
So you're actually rocking with Arizona for the upset again this week.
Devil's advocate, I don't think Arizona has a DB that can cover Jameson Williams one-on-one.
It might be just a little bit too many cooks in the kitchen. I love what the Lions have. I think Dan Campbell being over-aggressive cost them last week. They should be 2-0. I like the Lions, but like you said, it's going to be a fun game. I think we're really going to enjoy watching this. This is probably the afternoon game of the week, or the Ravens-Cowboys. But you have a fun slate. Like, it's not without – yeah. The Niners-Rams is just kind of weak. The only thing that really sucks is my game because it's the Panthers. So, moving on, though, are you ready to talk some Sunday Night Football? We have a good game of the defending champions versus the off-season champions. The Chiefs going into Atlanta 3.5-point favorites of a 46.5 over-under game against the 1-1 Falcons, who each won out to not start 0-2 on Monday night.
I think this is going to be a slaughter fest. Kirk has done nothing to impress me. Bijan Robinson might be able to do a few things because the Chiefs still really don't have that great of a rush defense. As long as you're running it to the outside, not running it right at Chris Jones, you'll be fine. Yeah, I'm not really looking forward to this one. I think Patrick Mahomes on Sunday night, we've seen it time and time again, that he just does what he does. He comes out here, he wins games. And I think that's what he's going to do. Hot take, Travis Kelce first touchdown, finally, maybe.
Taylor Swift in Hotlanta on Sunday night. Last question before we move on to Monday.
Probably. She's scheduled her thing around where she can make, she's only missing 4 games of the season, I believe it is.
Cig on the Swift watch for all of you people who don't care about football that watch this.
ML football.
Moving on here, we have a doubleheader on Monday Night Football. We have the Jaguars and the Bills. Bills are 5-point favorites at home against the 0-2 Jaguars. Siglin, what is wrong with Jacksonville?
For one, I didn't even know we had a doubleheader on Monday night in Week 3. That's unheard of.
Yep.
But I just don't think Doug Peterson wants to coach football anymore. Trevor Lawrence only wants to throw to one receiver. It's just not a good look down there, and I think that maybe Tank Bigsby should probably get more of the rushing roles and maybe give ETN more of the receiving and just mix in a few runs for him to keep him honest. But I think Tank Bigsby this season has looked like the better overall rusher, runner of the football. I wouldn't say overall back because Travis Etienne still can do what he can do out of the backfield with his hands and with his feet. And then, Brian Thomas Jr. is showing that he is that dude. The issue is Buffalo is sneaky, and they like to fight. And what is it? What did I just say about Patrick Mahomes? Oh, yeah, Josh Allen, he's the same way. When it comes to primetime TV, he's going to get it done unless he's facing one of those other guys.
That's all I'm going to say, primetime Allen. Jags haven't looked good until they prove me differently. Josh finds a way to win. That team's fun. Possibly could use a star receiver at some point.
You probably get a Josh Allen on Josh Allen sack again.
Yep. Yeah. Take the bet on the Josh Allen sack because that seems to happen every time these two play each other. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that one. Moving on to the second doubleheader, we have a fun matchup of the second overall pick versus a former number 1. Jaden Daniels and the Commanders travel to Cincinnati, 7.5-point dogs. As Cincinnati is favored at home with a 47.5 spread. Bengals are 0-2, and they got to shake something loose here to get a win because, like the Ravens, much better team that shouldn't reflect their record.
Well, both are Heisman quarterbacks. One's a national championship. With that being said, I just don't think that the Commanders have the defense to contend with this offense. We saw they could barely hold the Giants down, and that's not what Cincinnati's going to give you. Now, if we want to make this an interesting game, we're going to have to see Jaden Daniels come alive a little bit. You're going to have to quit holding them back. You're going to have to let him air it out. We're going to have to see that cannon. We're going to have to put Terry McLaurin down the field because he can throw it down there. He doesn't need fucking 5-yard dink and dunks. Let the kid throw.
Well, you saw last year. I don't think it was all Neighbors and Thomas. I think just like the quarterback he's facing, you kind of have a beautiful LSU trifecta that came together. They should have won more games, but probably didn't because of a lack of a defense. But that offense was dynamic last year. It was so much fun to watch, and both of these teams have a lot more potential, I think, that's been shown. I think Monday night you're going to see a big airing out, especially on the Cincinnati side. You don't have anybody who can cover Jamar. They looked better last week. You're talking a 15-yard, or a 20-yard pass interference penalty on 4th and 16. They actually are 1-1. So I do think the Bengals are the winners here. But I actually do like Washington to keep it close enough. I agree. I think we see the Jaden McDaniels unleashing the coming out party, however you want to put it. Jaden is going to be the one who explodes this game with his arm because the Bengals are actually really good at holding in quarterbacks for rush yards. Really good. So
Hendrickson will chase you down.
I like Trey Hendrickson for a sack here against the young guy this week. Just playing a little bit smarter. He's been on a tear. Like I said, I like the Bengals, Washington with the points, and I'll leave to you to wrap it up.
I like the Bengals as well. I think this will be their coming out game. Joe's always a little slow start till week 3. I think he picks it up a week earlier than he normally does this season, and that's just because they have an easier opponent.
Easier opponent, blonde hair. Enough said. But finally, to you.